This may be one of the strangest stories that I could bring to you this year about a process that very well could obliterate the gold market. I'll explain what I mean as we explore. You might remember all the buzz about an asteroid that contains quadrillions of dollars worth of precious metals, including gold. Now, obviously, something like that is a far-fetched idea, pun intended, that could make gold very abundant and destroy the precious metals market. But this is something that is a little bit more down to earth, and it is something that could be a real threat down the road to gold. Yes, that's right. I'm going to be referencing an article here from the Sunday Times about a new startup company, Marathon Fusion, has suggested that it could use nuclear power plants to turn mercury into abundant gold. And if so, there would be consequences. Yeah, that's putting it lightly. Wow. That's pretty amazing to think about. But I think it's still a ways off. We're going to get into that in a moment. But first, I want to remind you of channel sponsor Summit Metals. Summit Metals, they have a deal going on from here until the end of the month. July 31st, you can get $10 off of orders $500 and above until July 31st by using the code SummitSalivateSummer. Link to the code and to the website is in the description below. Alchemists thought it was possible to turn lead into gold. Most were con artists, but others, like Sir Isaac Newton, who gave us the laws of motion but spent his spare time trying to find the philosopher's stone, the vital ingredient to make the process work. He was serious. If only Sir Isaac had been around 400 years later, a modern version of alchemy has turned up, one that appears to have some basis in science rather than relying on an undiscovered magic rock. The alchemist this time is Marathon Fusion. That's right, Marathon Fusion is the name of the company. They could take this and make it more abundant. One of the horde of startup companies that has proliferated in recent years in the dash to perfect a new type of nuclear power plant. On July the 17th, one of its founders, Adam Rutowski, a former propulsion engineer at SpaceX with a physics PhD from Princeton University, published a paper saying it would be possible to harness one of the properties of fusion reactors to turn mercury into gold. Not just a trivial trace amount, but as has been done in the past with particle accelerators, but a veritable flood of the precious metal. Now, for some of us who've been studying this at least to some degree, really, that is not out of the realm of possibility considering how important mercury is in mining gold and refining it. We see that happening in artisanal mining as well, using mercury to help get the gold out, to extract the gold. So that is something that is certainly a more believable way to be able to utilize, mercury already right now is in the process of refining gold and taking it out of its raw form. So, especially with artisanal mining. But it's also utilized on a grander scale in mining precious metals. And this paper suggests that it would be possible to make 5 tons of gold a year for every gigawatt of power generated. To put that into context, a new nuclear station at Hinkley Point in Somerset is designed to generate 3.2 gigawatts. A Hinkley Point rated fusion station would be producing 16 tons of gold per year, worth 1.2 billion pounds at the current market price. If the new technology became widespread, the 3,500 odd tons of gold currently mined every year would soon be dwarfed by the amount produced by fusion. There are lots of reasons to be skeptical about this claim of abundant gold, which we will come to soon, but there are other interesting things to bear in mind. The authors have decent scientific credentials. As well as Rutowski, the 2 other contributors were Jake Harder, an engineering intern at Marathon, and Adam Parisisi, who was a physics PhD from Oxford and now works for the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory. Also, the science is not out of line with what has gone before, unlike, for example, the cold fusion claims 36 years ago by Martin Felician and Stanley Pons, two academics at the University of Utah. Scientists know that a fusion reactor could create the right conditions for this kind of elemental transformation has been proposed. If you bombard mercury atoms with neutrons produced in abundance in fusion reactors, then you will get a form of mercury that degrades into gold. Turning theory into reality, however, is a big stumbling block. Fusion is a wonderful idea, lots of clean energy from putting atoms together rather than splitting them apart. But it is, as skeptics often say, a technology that is perpetually 25 years away. So we're still a ways off, but nonetheless, it is something that is plausible and conceivable. And that means that that could put a real threat on the gold market. Recent successes have prompted a flood of private money into new companies, but there's no guarantee commercial fusion power will happen. Even if it did, the next step, finding the right engineering techniques to make the mercury to gold transformation feasible, is another big hurdle. Another thing to consider is that gold produced would be radioactive, although it should be safe to use after about 13 years in storage. So add 13 years to the first batch after 25 from now. So in the immediate future, we're good to go with gold. But still, this is more plausible and more likely than mining an asteroid and bringing that gold back. That's for sure. Who knows if all this stream of gold will ever arrive, but it does prompt an interesting thought. What happens if the metal we have been using as a store of value for the past 6,000 years becomes abundant? Gold's value comes from scarcity. There is not much point in owning it if it's readily available, and there would be some obvious consequences. Governments' gold reserves would gradually become worthless. And the UK has 310 tons stashed away. No major currency is still backed by gold, but you wouldn't rule out some currency instability if the ramification of that loss of government assets filtered through the market. Personal holdings would also lose their value as jewelry, although you would imagine that the best pieces would keep up some of their worth. Probably the biggest effect on investors, however, would be psychological. Without gold, there is, as a hedge against inflation, the thing to turn to when everyone else looks away. Bitcoin and some other crypto asset will become the people's answer, but they're still untested compared with gold's thousands of years of trading history. And you can't sew Bitcoin into the hem of your jacket when you have to make the midnight dash across the border to safety. There are other metals which might fit the bill. Silver, that's right. Silver might be the one metal that we would consider as that substitute against what's going on with gold if it becomes everly abundant in about 63 years or 70 some years from now. And this becomes something that you can mass produce gold in such a way. And it is too abundant, but it might become the one place to go. Because are they going to be able to take mercury and transform it into silver? Well, there's still too much of it to be able to consider that happening. So silver might just be the one place to go that would be an alternative to this abundant gold. Now, again, we're talking 70, 80 years from now before this becomes even an option or a possibility. So keep that in mind, folks. But just an interesting thought and theory that this is probably the one area that has more realistic chances of happening rather than mining an asteroid. And it could also potentially replace the mining of gold under the ground, as those reserves might run out, which means that in time, you can produce it artificially, but nonetheless, it still would be something that likely would probably be so far down the pike, that's not going to be a threat in the immediate future. But we have to get used to a world without gold as a backstop, and Britain dropped the gold standard for sterling in 1931, the U.S. for the dollar 40 years later, and life carried on. In any event, if this ever does become an issue for future generations, no one expects a commercial fusion power plant much before the late 2030s or even the following decade. And so this is something. So I don't know. Maybe this is an exercise in futility, but nonetheless, I think it's interesting that this is being explored as an option. Now, again, things like this, there are going to be some who are going to question the validity of such a process and what the motivation is for even producing an article about this. Why even do it? Is it a psyops campaign against gold for gold stacking? Well, I would say probably it's unlikely. I don't think there's much motivation here other than just the fact that it's an intriguing concept, and we're talking about science with gold, and alchemy has always been something that's fascinated society since it was a part of life way back in the Middle Ages. So there you have it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. I think their gold is not under threat anytime soon, but it is an interesting and quite a possible theory, and it is quite doable if all the stars align in such a way to make it happen. So with that being said, I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.